Welcome to another episode of the Village Boy Podcast. This is your host, Trez, and this is an episode that I have wanted to do for a very long time, but with the events of what has happened over the last couple of weeks, I did push it back because we had to do the episode of who Charlie Kirk really was, bless his soul, and his memorial, his wakekeeping was a Sunday. Um, uh, it was an emotional wakekeeping, but notwithstanding who the man really is, and that should have never happened to him. But this he was a champion for this segment. He was the champion for we want a merit-based system. We want meritocracy. We want a system that is colorless, colorblind. And so Republicans uh, are pushing for a colorless society. They don't see color all of a sudden, and they want a merit-based system. What's a merit-based system? It's a system where hiring is based on merit. Merits are typically, usually, your qualifications, your degrees, your resume, the pedigree on your resume. That's usually what merit is. And so we're going to look into this conversation what merit base is. But before we do, so we have to establish who are the people calling for a merit-based system, which is usually the MAGA Republicans asking for a merit-based system. The the Democrats, the radical left is usually asking for a more inclusive, everybody-based system. So we're saying that yes, somebody has to have the merits to be able to apply for a job. That's like the most fundamentals. But there are other aspects that determine how people get hired. So the radical left is pushing for an inclusive environment because they have already assumed that the person has the qualification. Now it just takes other variables to make sure this person gets the job over this person. But the MAGA Christian right, the Zionist right, says that they want a merit-based system. And let's listen to the president, the leader of the MAGA movement, talk about this merit-based system.
We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based.
We will forge a society that's colorblind, and that's America talking. America, at its very core, has a problem with color, and MAGA people, of all the people in the world, MAGA people are the ones saying they will forge a colorblind society. The Republicans have never, in the history of Republican existence, MAGA, a subset of Republican, solved a single American problem. So Americans are like, we have these problems, and you solve them, and then we no longer have this problem. Our lives are better because Republicans went in and put in policies that benefited Americans. And somehow they will forge a republic, a nation that's colorblind and merit-based. Okay, let's get into this conversation. So I decided to do what I do best, to only the village boy. And before we jump into that, if you're finding value in our platform, if this platform gives you any kind of essence, any kind of not bias, because we're not right, we're certainly, definitely not left. I would never identify as left, but I will be further away from being right. So we're right there smack in the middle. If you're a middle kind of person that don't pick side with either one of these dumb parties that don't solve real problems, hit the like button. This is your channel because we try to have a conversation that you're never going to hear anywhere else. If you want a crazy version of the conversation, not rooted in conspiracy theory, the Village Boy Podcast is your channel. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, leave a comment section, and tell us how you feel about the Village Boy Podcast. Let's carry on. So I asked, in a merit-based society system, Which of the both parties, which is who of the two is dumber, right? Who appears dumber based on education? So, by metrics of formal education, Democrats are generally more educated with a 15 to 20% point lead in bachelor degree attainment. So, Democrats who are not even pushing for merit are smarter than Republicans and MAGA who are asking for merit. So the dumber people are the ones asking for merit. So the people that don't even have the very foundational qualifications are asking for merit. So right off the bat, you know that merit is a smokescreen. You do know this, right? Because the people asking for merit don't even have it to show. So what is it that they're really asking for? Because if they're the dumber one of the two, they're asking for something they don't have. What is it that they're really saying? We don't know. We're just inferring at this point. With the MAGA Republicans, the MAGA Republicans are overwhelmingly non-college educated, 70 to 75%. And it gets worse when you push into the rural areas, working class. Only about 25 to 30% of Trump voters in 2024 had a bachelor's degree. Let me say that again. Only about 25% to 30% of Trump voters in 2024 had a bachelor's degree. Charlie was a college dropout, as you know. And of course, there's a lot of billionaires that are college dropout. That does not define somebody. He was able to build a Christian-backed Israeli movement called Turning Point USA with a lot of funding coming in. He was able to build that to his credit. So dropping out of college is not an indictment to you being dumb, because dumb people cannot go build a fortune. But he was a college dropout asking for merit. For who exactly? You have to build your own company, because Charlie, you would have never gotten a job because you have no skill sets. You really haven't worked anywhere. So in the merit base, as a white heterosexual man, as he likes to pride himself, what qualification, if somebody went into an interview with Charlie, apart from the fact that he was a white Christian Republican MAGA man, what qualification would he have as a college dropout to even talk or be an advocate or be the voice of merit-based hiring? Somebody that has no qualifications is the voice of the Republican MAGA branch of craziness, advocating for merit-based hiring. So you can understand that the dumber people are the ones asking for merit. That has to mean more to it. But if you hear merit and you're a slow person, like when the things that Charlie said, and you're just like, oh, he was never. If you hear merit and that's all you heard, and you're gonna be like, yes, we want a merit-based system. Yes. Why would anybody object? Why would anybody be against a merit-based system? And that's the truth. I have to ask myself that too. Why would anybody object to a merit-based system? But if the dumber people are the ones asking for a merit-based system, then I have to ask the question, why is it not the Democrats who are smarter with the college degrees asking for a merit-based system? Because they have the merit. They would be the one disenfranchised because they have the qualifications. Democrats have a significant advantage in formal education, with nearly half of their voters holding at least a bachelor's degree. This is driven by urban, younger, more diverse voters. And you know, when MAGA hears diversity, all they know they hear is black. Women and non-whites are more likely to pursue higher education. In the 2024 election, 13 showed a 13-point Democratic lead among college graduates. So, what does merit mean if we're not starting with qualifications? In your resume, there's a spot for qualifications. But does qualification say paints the full picture? Of course not. Because you could have the best qualifications and you suck at the job. And somebody could have been at the job for 4 or 5 years and they have a perfect understanding of the job. They know what is required to do this job, but they don't have the formal education to back the knowledge required. Right? So merit in itself cannot exist in an absolute situation where what are we going to look as merit? Because when you start moving the goalpost, then it's no longer merit. What is the defining factor of merit? Are we going to say, oh no, it's education alone that's going to define merit? Because MAGA Republicans have not told us what merit is. But what they're saying, and I'll come to it. What MAGA Republicans are saying is they believe that they have merit and they're being left aside because they're advocating that we want the argument here was that DEI was taking white men out of the job, and they don't want DEI. They want a system based on merit. And that means they want white people back in the workforce because they have the merit. And the DEI program was introducing people that did not have merit. It factored race, gender, and every other factor, sexual orientation and everything in between. You know, the liberals, you always have to have sexual orientation in there. It's a sexual driven party with the liberals, right? So, but what are they saying? What is MAGA truly saying with merit? Because they don't have it when it comes to education. So maybe they're holding on to work experience because they're rural, handy kind of people. So maybe they're. But during an interview, if you've ever been to an interview, during an interview, your resume gets profiled. 100 people apply. 100 people apply for a job. Let's say 30 people qualify. They have merit. They've qualified the initial stage. So the company has pulled out 30 people who at the very base, they want interview for the job. So they already qualified. They've already met the merit standards on academy, work history, and they need to go for an interview process. What does an interview process establish? Because at the very base level, 100 people applied, 30 were selected. What would you say those 30 people represent? It doesn't represent merit. It represents merit at every front. Check resume, academic, check background, jobs that you've done. They meet the minimum need of what's required to do the job. So 30 people qualified. That's merit. But they need one candidate out of these 30 people. So it's no longer merit. There are other factors that come into play because 30 people merited that position by qualification, by experience, 10 years, 20 years, 30 people met the profile. So the interview process is a process of elimination of of the 30 candidates. There's no one, because if there was one that had more merits than all of them, they would have just picked that one out of it. But there were 30 candidates selected to go through an interview process. And maybe 30 is a lot. So they're going to go through and say, we're going to interview 5 to 10 more candidates. But all of them, to be able to make the interview level, you must have merit. So when Republicans say merit, this is not what they're talking about. Because the interview process, this is how it works. They go through a system of review of your resume and pick the candidates that would go through an interview process. That's merit. That is merit. But you've still not gotten the job. Why? Because of factors like a fit in the company. Would you fit in this company? That has nothing to do with merit. That has something to do with your personality and the people that are already working in this company. So you could have the merit, but you may not be an ideal fit in this company. The culture of this company may not work with you. And so they're going to spring up questions. You blow up the technical part, but they're going to spring up soft skills questions and ask you how you handle conflict, how you handle certain situations. That's to identify if you are going to be a fit in this company. What does that have to do with merit? So if somebody has good skills, check all the boxes, has all the merits, but they're not going to be a good fit in a company, we should just hire them because they are qualified to do the job? No. Companies are still owned by, and this is also what the far right MAGA promotes, right? Private ownership. So an individual wants to be able to have somebody that's going to be able to adhere to their ideology and not come in and do whatever they want to do because they're qualified. Another variable would be, are you coachable? A lot of teams want to hire people that are coachable, that can be trained, right? Because you might have a skill set that works for one company. I need somebody that has a skill set, but I'm going to train you because our software is a little different. But at the very base, you can use your skill, but we're going to train you to work on our own systems. And so I need somebody that's coachable, trainable, is willing to learn. So if the best person for the job got all the qualification, checks all the boxes, has worked for 25 years, but when I interview him, I don't feel as if he's coachable, he's approachable, we can train him. Should I hire him or her just because they have the merits? Should I just go blindly and say I'm going to hire this person, even though I know down the road I'm going to have a problem with this person? Should I still hire this person? So merit is not a factor at that point. Your ability to be coachable is the most important factor for this company. And companies are willing to hire somebody that is not even as experienced as some other person, but is coachable and trainable, and you could train them and you could coach them, you could get them to where you want them to be. You can send them back for more training. Companies do that. Hire somebody, not a whole lot of experience, and send them, pay for their training and get them to train and do exactly what you want to do because you feel like this person is more, I can move this person better than I can move this other person. Where does merit fit in that narrative? Do you want to change that now where companies are like robots? They're only going to hire somebody based on merits. And that's why I tell you, when you hear MAGA talks, when you hear MAGA say something, when you hear Republicans say something, pause, take a minute. Because what they mean is not what it is that they actually said. Merit is not what they're driving at. And we'll get to it. We'll get to it. So, during an interview process, and the question comes up, did you serve? Yes, I served in Afghanistan. It's a veteran, and the interviewer too is a veteran. Now they share a common bond of being veteran. They served. I served in Afghanistan. You served in Iraq. I served this year. You served in that year. Now they have a bond. They have a common interest. They don't care anymore about qualifications. Do you want to take that away? Do you want to take that common shared interest away and say, let's only focus on merit? We don't care if we went to the same school, alma mater, if we're sorority sisters. We don't care if we share a common bond that's similar to the culture integration part that I earlier mentioned. We only want somebody who is the best candidate in terms of merit. This is what is called added value. Oftentimes, military guys are disciplined, organized. That's what they bring. They don't necessarily have the skill that is needed in that particular job. But you could hire them because, one, you're giving back to your country for the people that served and protected your country in hiring and recruiting a veteran. You could be exploiting them if you want somebody with high security clearance and a veteran has the security clearance that you need but doesn't have the skill set. You're just going to hire him as one of a token hire because you need that security clearance. Companies do this all the time when they want to have a contract with the government. Where is the merit-based conversation then? Or a company should not explore this avenue because they should go and rather get somebody who is qualified, has the merits, but doesn't have the security background that they need. Merit-based is not what you think it is. Merit-based is not what you think it is. When Republicans say merit, it's a way of eliminating non-white folks because they're assuming that these people have no merit and only them have merit. But they cannot say it that way. They cannot say it like that. So they hide behind merit and say we want a system where it's merit-based. We want a merit-based system. That's the smoke screen. That's the smoke screen. Let's go ahead and play this conversation real quick. Let's go and let's watch this video before I introduce the next segment.
No more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. That's the policy here, $100,000 a year for H-1B visas, and all of the big companies are on board. We've spoken to them about the gold card.
They love it. They love it. They really love it. They need it. Go ahead, Chuck.
Mr. President, it seems like there's
$100,000 a year for an H-1B visa. Now, in a merit-based system, they created an H-1B visa. a merit-based system created an H-1B visa. They said, we wanted the best and the brightest to come and work in the country, to add value to what's already existing. Merit-based, because they understand, or at least they understood a conception of the H-1B visa, that there are definitely geniuses and smart people outside of America, that it would be an added value to brain drain those people into America, to add value to America, the American economy, the American ecosystem. So they created an H-1B visa, a work visa for highly talented people. What did American companies do? American companies cut off Americans to replace with more meritorious people, people with more qualifications, people that were better than Americans. You would think that a group of people pushing merit-based hiring would be for that, because the best people are having the jobs. That's a merit-based system. The best, because the economy has not crashed. The economy is still doing good. People are still profiting. Companies are building. Apple and all of these companies are growing because folks from China, folks from India, folks from around the world are coming in, and they're cutting off the lower intelligence Americans, in this instance, just for this, the point of this conversation, and replacing them with a merit-based system. The same Trump at the start of the video that said we're going to create a colorblind society and a merit-based society is now signing an executive order for $100,000 at this time a year for foreigners, people who are more intelligent or more qualified or has more merit for the job. So then one has to ask the question, is it a merit-based system, or is it what is it? I mean, how clear of a merit-based system can it be? Those who are more qualified, companies know what they're looking for. So they found out that Indians are more qualified than Americans. Instead of investing in Americans to make Americans just as qualified as the Indians and the Chinese, the company said no, they're just going to go and get a merit-based hiring system. Hire these folks, bring them in, and have them do the jobs, and to hell with Americans. That's what companies said. And the same Trump who was proning and pushing a merit-based system is now opposing or charging companies for doing a merit-based colorblind system. Unless merit-based was a smoke screen. Unless it was a fake word, a coded word. Unless what they're saying is, when we say merit, we mean white. And now I have no problems with white folks in the system. I'm just addressing the conversation the way it's appearing to me, because I am opposed to the H-1B visa because it's robbing American children. There's nothing more of a priority to any politician than American children. That's why I oppose the H-1B. That's why. But because the MAGA folks are talking about we want a merit-based system, then I have to ask the question, when the Chinese and the Indians are getting a job and getting this job at the expense of Americans and mostly white folks, because white MAGA is opposed to colored people or people of color getting these jobs. They're like, no, we want everybody to be pooled. The only people that were being affected were white men, because white women were covered, they're minority group. And I know MAGA does not know that people of color does not mean black. MAGA really does not know this. It's shocking in 2025. And every other person is included in that bracket. But MAGA says, no, we need more white representation. And they use merit to justify more white representation. And when companies go out now and get a merit-based system, an actual color-blind merit-based system, Chinese, white, people from all over the place to come and do the work, MAGA is still opposed to it. So then you know that it was never merit-based. It was colored-based. Because anybody who is pro-merit-based would be okay with the H-1B visa. That's as meritorious as it gets. It's cost effective for the company, and the best people, the most knowledgeable people are working at affordable rates compared to bloated American salaries for people that are just not as smart as the folks. But that's a conversation for another day. I'm making this argument in the context of merit. These people are the argument now is that we want only Americans. When we talk about merit, we're talking about merit for Americans, not merit for folks out there. But that's not what Charlie, Donald, and all of these people said. They said we want a merit-based hire. So behind all of that, it means more than just we want a merit-based society. We want a colorless society, because a colorless society would have Indians doing the job, would have Chinese people doing the job. But they're putting 100,000, which we just found out was a fake $100,000, by the way. It's a one-time fee. Still a lot of money, and I don't think companies are good, but it doesn't change, and it doesn't benefit the Americans in any way. Like I've said, Republicans don't do anything that benefits Americans. What they just said would have benefited Americans. They would have put a cap on the number of H-1 applications that are coming so that Americans can now rise up to the occasion and get these jobs. But the White House came and clarified that, oh no, it's not a yearly $100,000. It's just a one-time. And everybody that has already acquired the H-1B visa, you're good to go. You can come back, you live life. You could just take the jobs from the American kids, and it's okay. Nothing wrong with that. So when you hear MAGAs push any agenda, understand that what they are saying is not what they mean. When they say merit-based, we want the merit-based. And the Chinese are taking work from the Americans in a merit-based way. And MAGA is upset, and MAGA reverts and says, no, we only want Americans. Then it was never merit-based. Merit-based cannot be limited to Americans. That's actually a DEI program, because you've isolated a special group. Most American companies are international companies, just for the record. So American international companies can hire international people to work for it. That's why some of the people live in China and around the world, all over the place. Because it will be hard for an American company to only hire American people, because they're global companies, most of them. So merit-based is not what you're underlying saying. You don't want the discrimination of white men. It's just not that white men were discriminated against. Other people were just included into the pool. And now you're opposed to a foreign-based H-1B visa that's doing ravage, causing ravage and damage in your society. And you're not fighting for black and brown kids and colored kids and multicolored kids. You're only fighting MAGA. You're only fighting for white kids. Because genuinely, if you're fighting for every American child, Trump should have kept this initial bill for the $100,000 every year for every single H-1B visa. And retrospective, we take it back to when he became president. The companies should pay up because American children are suffering. That's the only time I would believe that MAGA and Republicans are actually fighting for the betterment of Americans, because once they start talking about we don't see color, know that all they do is see color. We want merit in an economy that has to do a lot with individual and personal connections and relationships. Then you understand that merit is a gatekeeping word. You understand that merit is a smoke screen for something else. Because truly, if people are pro-merit, they will be pro-H-1B visa. But we understand the damage that H-1B visa does to the local population. And so we cannot be pro-merit. But that does not mean that we're expecting substandards. That's because we understand that merit is not the only criteria to get you into a position. Relationships, connection, your personality. There's so many factors that trump merit to get you into a position. Federal government job says you have to be an American to work for the federal government. That right there is a delimiter. It has already reduced every other person that's not an American citizen to not be able to work in the federal government. Now, if you have a criminal record, you fall out. You could be a citizen, but you have a record, and now you're not going to be selected. So that pool shrinks even more. We want more minority people to apply. That's because at the very end, white men have dominated the country for over 250 years. Maybe it's time to open up the hiring pool to minority women. And minority women are white women and every other woman. White women are a minority in America. White women are predominantly married to white men. So a white woman having access to something that's reserved for minorities also directly and indirectly benefits a white man who was excluded. So they didn't pick him, but his wife was able to get in, and the bread and the resources come back home to the white man. In an inclusive part, some people are going to suffer. It's just the nature of the game. When black boys were not able to be quarterbacks, because white coaches, white people said the quarterback position was for intelligent people alone. Black kids were not intelligent. They were strong and fast, and that's all they could do. Black kids were not intelligent enough to be quarterbacks. But what did Republicans say when they said that? What did they mean when they said that? They said this position was a white position, and you're all black people. We're going to let you in the league, but you're just going to do a lot of the running and blocking and doing all of the physical and sprinting task of the game. But the intelligent part of the game, we're going to keep it for white kids. But they could have never said that it's the quarterback should only be for white kids. So they said black kids were not intelligent enough to play quarterback. And when that law started to change, look at the NFL right now. Black kids all over the place, quarterback, everywhere else. You even have white kids running back. You know how special you have to be as a white kid and a running back? Do you know how special you have to be a white receiver in the competitive landscape of today's NFL? But that's because the doors were open and more people came in, and meritocracy sat in there. The best talent was selected. So when by default you just close the door and say, let's do merit, just close the door and say, no, let's bring everybody in. And when we bring everybody in, it's not merit sometimes. The Heisman Trophy might come into the NFL and suck and be bad. Might be good, but some might be bad. A player with amazing stats in college might come into the NFL and not be able to keep up. Merit. They were drafted first round, second round. They were drafted first pick, second pick. I don't know how you say your NFL drafts. And when it gets to the NFL, you can't keep up. So for me, merit is not a base to determine who gets hired, who gets picked. Because you truly only determine merit 6 months into the employment. Because you could have the best degree, the best everything, and I hire you and I fire you in 2 weeks. In 6 months to a year, when I am determining your evaluation, then I could determine that, yes, you did merit this position because I have seen you work now. That's the only time you could determine merit. You cannot determine merit at the start. And that's why human intervention matters when you're hiring, because so many factors go into play into making sure that the right person is hired for the right job. A bunch of low lives dropouts will sit somewhere and talk about pilots and pilot qualifications that is strictly under the purview of the FAA. So yes, when you see Republicans talk about merit, it's a smokescreen. They're asking for exclusively white men access. And when it backfires, like the H-1B visa, then they come back and say, oh, we want priority for all Americans. It's a lie. If you want priority for all Americans, you first of all just shut down that H-1B visa and make Americans a true priority. But see, companies don't care. The government does not care. And they're going to have people like Charlie before he left us talk about merit base when he cannot even land an interview because he has no merit from his background, his degrees. He dropped out from school. He hasn't held a job since he was 14 or 15 or 16. Went on to create a platform that he ran. So what merit can Charlie teach us? What merit can we learn from Charlie? If you find value in this episode, please click the like button, subscribe, leave your comments. Let's have that conversation. Thank you. It's your host, Tress, for the Village Boy. Bye.